The Council's last hope. The war chamber of the Galactic Council was a cathedral of silence, broken only by the flickering holograms of defeat. A crimson line cut across the star map, pulsing slowly toward the heart of the galactic core. It wasn't just a front, it was a death sentence. One system after another had fallen to the Varn Dominion, a species that knew no diplomacy, no retreat, and no fear. They've breached the Tyrell Bastion, came the dry voice of Minister Korov. His skin shimmered with the gold of his desert world, but he looked drained, the shimmer dulled. We have nothing left that can hold them. The chamber murmured. Dozens of species, hundreds of worlds represented in a single ring of ornate thrones, now reduced to whispering despair. Supreme Arbiter Trells tapped his clawed fingers against the edge of his station. We have burned every resource, every contingency. The Dominion adapts to our weapons within hours. Our fleets have lost cohesion. We are undone. A figure stepped forward, cutting through the gloom with an odd sort of calm. She was human, tall, gray-haired, wrapped in the sleek black of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her voice carried no urgency, just inevitability. Protocol, Echo Veteran. The chamber went still. Trells narrowed his eyes. That protocol has not been invoked in over a century. Because it was never needed, she replied. Until now, a plenary delegate hissed. You speak of the old Terran soldiers. The primitives. They've been out of service for 100 cycles. Why would we revive fossils? The human didn't flinch. Because you've tried everything else. Your technology has failed. Your strategies have failed. These fossils fought wars when defeat wasn't theoretical. It was personal. They were forged in extinction. More murmurs. Some mocking. Some intrigued. She activated a panel on her wrist. A 3D feed blinked to life. Grainy footage played. Armored figures moving through hellish battlefields. Smoke, ash, screams, and steel. Men and women in battered armor, wielding slug throwers, plasma cutters, and blades. No drones. No AI. Just raw, ruthless coordination and willpower. They're not just soldiers, she said. They're war incarnate. A silence settled over the chamber like a thick fog. The Varn were not simply beating them. They were dismantling their belief in progress. Perhaps, the thought went, the answer was behind them, not ahead. Trells leaned forward. And if they fail? The human diplomat didn't smile, but something shifted in her eyes. Then you'll at least die beside legends. 4 days later, aboard the Council carrier Ascendancy Dawn, the hangar thrummed with tension. Hundreds gathered, officers, diplomats, envoys, to witness the arrival of Earth's last gamble. A low hum announced the transport's arrival. The ship looked unremarkable, boxy and weathered, a stark contrast to the gleaming elegance of Council vessels. But the moment its ramp lowered, the air changed. They stepped out slowly, shadows and armor. Not the pristine exosuits of modern armies, but scratched and scorched relics, worn like second skins. The first was tall, broad, with a mechanical left arm and a burn scar across his jaw. Behind him came a woman with a patch over one eye, a lit cigar between her teeth. Another carried an enormous rail rifle on one shoulder, whistling an old Terran tune. No salute, no speeches, just presence. A young lieutenant whispered, "They're so old." The scarred man stopped, turned to face the onlookers, and said, "We're not old. We're experienced. And we heard you've got a war that needs ending." No one spoke. He surveyed the crowd with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much and survived it all. "Names don't matter," he said, "but you can call me Graves. This is my team. We weren't sleeping. We were waiting. And now that the galaxy finally remembers what real war looks like," he cracked his neck and stepped forward. "Let's remind it how humans fight." The crowd parted like mist. The old soldiers walked through them, silent shadows wrapped in forgotten fury. And somewhere deep in the Council's records, Protocol Echo Veteran changed from archive to active. The Old Guard arrives. The forward operations base on Zarnok. 7 was a nightmare wrapped in a supply depot. Ash rained from the red sky, coating everything in a layer of fine grit. Energy shields flickered around the perimeter, failing every few hours under the weight of Varn artillery. Medical units overflowed. Morale had collapsed days ago. Commander Yolvek of the Shintar Legion stared at the human transport as it landed with a bone-shaking thud. He expected a battalion. Instead, 12 figures stepped out. Just 12. They sent us a museum exhibit, he muttered. A grizzled human descended the ramp first, dragging a massive duffel that clanked with weapons no longer in galactic circulation. Graves, they called him. No rank, no insignia. Just that name. The others followed without formation, like wolves entering an unfamiliar den. Quiet, alert, dangerous. An officer approached. General Graves, I'm Lieutenant Valen, your council liaison. Drop the titles, son. Graves cut in. We're not here for ceremonies. He scanned the base with a sharp eye. Bad setup. Too exposed. Kill zone right through your east perimeter. And your comms tower's broadcasting like a beacon. Valen blinked. You just got here. Graves pointed. Sniper there, demolitions there, medic with me. Let's fix this dump before someone dies. The old soldiers moved like they'd been doing it all their lives. No hesitation. No wasted motion. Yolvek watched in stunned silence as the humans restructured the base in under an hour. Supply crates turned into barriers. Weak points reinforced. Firing lanes cleared. They didn't ask permission. They didn't wait for approval. They just acted. By nightfall, the atmosphere had changed. The alien troops, once skeptical, now watched the humans with a strange mix of curiosity and awe. The humans didn't talk much. They cleaned weapons older than most of the soldiers present. They told no stories. They made no boasts. But they knew. They knew war. Private Sarek, a young insectoid trooper barely through his first deployment, approached one of them. An older woman with sun-scorched skin and a prosthetic leg that hummed softly when she moved. You're not what I expected, he said, antennae twitching nervously. She glanced at him, then handed over a dented flask. Drink. He took a sip. It tasted like fire and old regrets. What is this? Whiskey. Earth tradition. Calms nerves before a fight. Sarek hesitated. Are we really going to fight the Varn tomorrow? They're advancing faster than we thought. She took the flask back. Kid, when the Varn come, you don't fight because you think you'll win. You fight because losing ain't an option. Dawn broke under the roar of cannon fire. The Varn had come early. Sleek, armored monstrosities swarmed from the ridge. Chitinous plating, plasma lances, and hive mind precision. The alien troops panicked. Some tried to fall back. Others froze. Then a voice cut through the chaos like a thunderclap. Hold the line. Graves stood on the front barrier, slug rifle braced against his shoulder. The weapon kicked like a living beast, sending explosive rounds into the advancing swarm. Sniper left flank. A sharp crack echoed from a rooftop as the railgun specialist, call sign Hawk, dropped 3 Varn in rapid succession. Demo now. The demolitions expert, an old Earthborn named Riggs, triggered a line of buried charges. The ridge exploded, hurling Varn into the sky. What was chaos turned to control. Alien soldiers rallied, following the humans' lead. For the first time in weeks, the Varn advance slowed. And then it stopped. When the dust cleared, the base still stood. So did the 12 humans. Burned, bloodied, and breathing. Yolvek approached Graves, who sat calmly cleaning his rifle with a rag that had once been white. That was effective, Yolvek admitted. Graves didn't look up. That was warm-up. The Shintar commander glanced around. The alien soldiers looked different now, more focused. Less afraid. How do you do it? He asked. Graves finally looked at him, eyes like scorched stone. We stopped trying to survive a long time ago. Now we fight to make sure others do. That night, the humans gathered around a makeshift fire. Not for warmth, Zarnak, 7 was sweltering, but for ritual. One of them, the one called Smoke, lit a battered cigar and exhaled slowly. Didn't think I'd miss this, he muttered. Miss what? Asked Riggs. The smell of fear, Smoke said with a smirk. Means we're doing something important. Graves said nothing, staring into the fire like it owed him an answer. Behind them, the council sent a single encrypted message. Engagement successful. Human veterans effective. morale rising, reassessing potential. And in the cold halls of the council chambers, the quiet shock began to turn into something more dangerous. Lessons in blood. The city of Varesh had been a jewel. Towers of crystal, roads that pulsed with light, a monument to unity among the stars. Now it was a graveyard. The Varn had taken it a week ago, and since then, all transmissions had ceased. The council wanted it back, not just for the tactical advantage, but for the symbol it represented. Hope, pride, civilization. They sent the humans. Graves stood on the ridge overlooking the city, flanked by a platoon of alien soldiers, Shuntar, Plenary, and the insectoid Vex. The younger ones twitched with nervous energy. Too clean, too quiet. We drop here, Graves said, stabbing a gloved finger toward a shattered boulevard. Clear and dirty. No fancy maneuvers. In, sweep, secure. Valen frowned. Sir, council doctrine suggests we approach from the eastern side, less fortified. Graves cut him off. The Varn expect doctrine. That's why they win. He turned to his team. Smoke, flank right. Riggs, stick to the sewers. Hawk, get high and stay deadly. The veterans nodded without a word, a rhythm long since etched into their bones. The strike began at dawn. The humans moved like ghosts, gritty, efficient, silent. They didn't wait for cover. They made it. Walls became traps. Rubble turned into ambush points. Slug rounds roared in confined alleys, turning the Varn advance into a retreat. The alien troops followed, hesitant at first, then inspired. They saw it now. The rhythm of war the humans knew by instinct. Valen found himself moving without waiting for orders, covering Graves as he breached a barricade. Plasma rounds cut the air, but Graves moved through them like a man already dead, cutting down two Varn with a combat knife older than the war itself. What kind of training is this? Valen gasped between shots. It's not training, Graves said, reloading without looking. It's memory. In the city's central plaza, the fight turned savage. Riggs' explosives leveled an entire Varn bunker. Smoke and a pair of Vex charged through the debris, laying down fire. One of the Vex, Sarek, took a blast to the chest, fell hard. Smoke slid in beside him, dragging the insectoid behind cover. You're not done, Bug. Suck it up. Sarek coughed, his mandibles twitching. Why save me? Smoke jammed a stim injector into the young trooper's side. Because once, someone dragged me out of the fire. You keep the chain going. The Vex eyes blinked in confusion, and then understanding. Meanwhile, Hawk called from her perch. Movement on the tower, big one. Looks like their commander. Target him, Graves replied. I've got a shot, but he's wearing some kind of shield tech. Graves grunted. Then we get closer. He turned to Valen and the remaining squad. We hit that tower now. Don't wait. Don't think. Just move. They stormed the central spire. Close quarters carnage in glass and blood. The Varn leader, a massive brute wrapped in black armor, met them at the summit. Valen was thrown across the chamber in the first exchange. Graves stood his ground. You shouldn't be here, the Varn hissed. Your kind is obsolete. Graves smiled, blood on his teeth. Obsolete doesn't mean useless. Just means we've been waiting for the right moment. The fight was short, brutal. Graves fought like a relic of a darker age. No elegance, just survival. He shattered the Varn's shield with a blade forged from earth steel, then drove it home through the alien's throat. When the tower fell, the city followed. The Varn retreated. Varesh was theirs again, but not without cost. Riggs had lost an arm. Hawk was unconscious. Smoke had carried two Vex to safety with half his ribs broken. They gathered in the ruins of the plaza, sitting in silence beneath a cracked council banner. Valen approached Graves, eyes wide. That was chaos. Brilliant, but chaos. Graves didn't look up. He was wrapping Riggs' stump in torn cloth. That's war, he said. You can read about it. Simulate it. But until you bleed in it, you don't understand it. Valen nodded slowly. And now, Graves finally met his eyes. Now you understand. That night, the council received another report. Operation Varesh successful. Human veterans key to outcome. Alien troops now requesting Earth-led training. In a private chamber, a counselor muttered under her breath. They fight like demons. Trells, watching footage of Graves' final blow, whispered no. They fight like humans. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Varn began to adjust their strategy. They hadn't planned for ghosts. The shockwave. The final battle wasn't supposed to happen. The Varn had thought they could end the war with a single, decisive blow, an all-out assault on the heart of the human-led coalition forces. Their armies were vast, their technology devastating. But they hadn't counted on the humans. Graves stood at the edge of the battlefield, overlooking the Varn fortress. The walls were towering, made of blackened obsidian that shimmered with energy. It had been an impregnable fortress for centuries, until now. They had one last push to make, one final fight to end the war. And this time, the Varn weren't the only ones who had learned something. "We can't hold them much longer," Valen said, standing beside Graves, his eyes scanning the horizon. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, and the cold winds of Zarnok, 7 howled across the battlefield. "The Varn are throwing everything they have at us." Graves didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the enemy lines. His voice was low, almost a growl. "Then we give them everything we've got." The night was alive with the sound of war. The Varn had gathered their forces in a final, desperate push. They poured out of their fortress in waves. Heavily armored war machines, hordes of foot soldiers, and artillery units. They had learned, too. They were no longer underestimating the humans. Graves and his team moved with methodical precision. They had done this countless times before, and they weren't about to stop now. The soldiers who followed them, those young aliens who had learned to fight under human leadership, were ready. Fear had been replaced with resolve. Riggs, his prosthetic arm, now functional but rough, crouched behind a makeshift barricade. He tossed a grenade into a Varn cluster, triggering a chain reaction of explosions. Hawk, perched atop a nearby ridge, picked off stragglers with surgical precision. Smoke and the Vex darted between ruins, engaging in hand-to-hand combat with the Varn who had managed to close the distance. Graves gave no orders. He didn't need to. The veterans had already taken charge. Every strike was calculated, every move intentional. The human way was to survive by any means necessary. The Varn warlord, Thrax, stood at the center of the battlefield, watching as his forces were slowly ground down. His eyes were cold like the black stone of his fortress. But the humans were relentless, and their tactics had shattered his confidence. "Send an elite," Thrax barked into his communicator. "Break them." A dozen of his finest soldiers, behemoth-like Varn-clad in the most advanced exoskeletons, advanced toward the human lines, armed with plasma blades and pulse cannons. They were living weapons, built for one purpose, to kill. But Graves wasn't intimidated. "Smoke," he said into his comms. "Flank them." "On it," Smoke responded, his voice gruff. Graves signaled to Valen. "We move in 5. The two of them broke from cover, charging toward the Varn elites. The Varn had the upper hand in terms of firepower, but the humans had speed, agility, and ruthless determination. Valen opened fire, keeping the Varn elites pinned down. Graves slipped into the chaos, closing the distance. He moved like a shadow, a blur of motion, dodging plasma bolts and tearing through the Varn ranks with a brutal efficiency that made even the veterans flinch. One of the Varn elites tried to block his path, raising its massive pulse cannon to fire. Graves closed the gap in an instant, ducked low, and drove his combat knife through the Varn's exposed neck, severing the main power conduit. The Varn elite crumpled, and the rest of his squad followed. The fortress walls trembled as the final wave of assault began. The Varn were on the retreat, their once formidable defense lines now shattered and in disarray. Graves watched, unblinking, as the first of the Varn war machines collapsed under a direct hit from one of Riggs' last demolition charges. For the first time in weeks, the humans had the upper hand. The Varn are broken. Then, as Graves turned to give the order to advance, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He spun, expecting more enemies, but instead, it was Valen, his face hard as stone. "The warlord is still alive," Valen said, his voice tense. "He's holed up in the command center. You're not going to like the way he's fighting." Graves nodded, already moving. "We end it now." The final showdown took place inside the Varn's Dark Command Center. The walls pulsed with unnatural energy, and the air crackled with tension. Thrax stood at the center, a towering figure surrounded by his most loyal soldiers. But Graves didn't hesitate. "Thrax," he called, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. The warlord turned, his face a twisted snarl. "You should have stayed dead, human." Graves didn't answer. He just charged. The battle inside the command center was a blur of violence. Thrax was strong, stronger than any of the Varn Graves had faced before. His plasma blades cut through the air, but Graves was faster. They fought in a deadly dance, a clash of titans. But it was the old human's resilience that gave him the edge. In the end, it was a single precise strike, Graves' combat knife finding the weak point in Thrax's armor. That ended it. The warlord collapsed, and with him, the war. The battlefield fell silent. Graves stood over the fallen warlord, breathing heavily. His soldiers gathered around him, their faces marked with the grim satisfaction of victory. The Varn were defeated. The war was over, and as Graves looked out over the shattered fortress, he could hear the message that the Council had been too slow to understand. Humanity wasn't extinct. It had just been waiting for the moment to remind the galaxy that when it came to war, there was no force more relentless than an old human soldier.